forward to the debate we were waiting for. So the motion of this round is, this House supports the decision of overturning Roe v. Wade. So this is an ancient parliamentary style debate format. We will be following the time stipulation of the first 6 speeches, that is the constructive speeches, which will be 5 minutes long. The opening speech will first be given by the side government and then followed by team opposition. The sequence of speeches is Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Opposition Leader, Government Whip, Opposition Reply and Government Reply. The first tap will be given at 5 minutes 30 seconds and the second tap will be given at 5 minutes. After this, we will move towards the reply speeches and the time stipulated for it is 3 minutes. The first tap will be given at 2 minutes 30 seconds and the second tap will be given at 3 minutes. The reply speech will be first given by the side opposition and then the side government. It can be given by opposition leader or deputy opposition leader, and so for the government side by the Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister leader. You can ask unlimited number of POIs, but you will have to answer at least one. So let the SPCE AD finals begin. So let us now begin with the government Prime Minister. I'll give you a countdown in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon to the House. As the Prime Minister today, and more importantly as a woman, I feel this topic is extremely relevant to us, our times and our rights. So let me start off by taking my burden, which is setting the context for this debate. The House supports the decision of overturning Roe v. Wade. So what was the case exactly? We need to start with that so that we can go ahead. Norma McCorvey, or as in the court files is represented as Jane Roe, in 1969 in Texas, when she was pregnant with her 3rd child, and in Texas abortion was illegal back then, she lodged a complaint saying that she wanted absolute right to terminate pregnancy in any way at any time. And as we all know, this decision was overturned in 2022. The Supreme Court didn't agree with her assertion that the abortion can be terminated at any time and anyhow. That was the overturning, and that is something we need to keep in mind as the context for this debate. So why the overturning actually happened is that they came up with the argument that fetus is a person as protected by the 14th Amendment. And what they saw was that this ruling, the ruling that was given in 1969, actually went against the health of pregnant women and the potential life of fetuses. And that is why, after a lot of consideration, this debate was overturned in 2022. I'm not going to make it hypothetical any longer. I'm going to back it up with straight up facts. What happens in an abortion is up to 16 weeks, the method of aborting is different, and after 16 to 24 weeks, the method of aborting is different. Up to 16 weeks, the fetus is in a stage where it can be pulled out by suction. It is not sentient, as you would put it, and there is not much danger to the health of the mother also. After 24 weeks, the fetus is, I'm going to use the medical term here, it is potentially viable outside the mother, which means it is sentient, it is functional, and the removal process becomes that much more complicated because it involves in many methods surgically separating parts of the body and removing them piece by piece, where a doctor has to keep track so that no piece is actually left behind.
They have a POI.
Yeah, please.
You mentioned the 14th Amendment, which states the right to privacy, which was actually violated in this overturning. How do you justify that?
So the right to privacy is given, so abortion now is legal in many places up to 24 weeks. After that, the fetus's right to privacy or the right to life also comes into question over there. That is why this debate is being conducted. Okay, so now, like I was saying, after 24 weeks, there is either it is cut into parts and then it is pulled out, or another thing that is done is, if it is very late into the 3rd trimester, a lethal injection is administered to the fetus. And very simply put, this sounds like 1st degree murder because there is an actual lethal injection being used. Next, I would like to come to the risks to the mother. So when we talk about late-term pregnancies, or if we give the right to terminate the pregnancy at any time and somebody goes in for a 3rd trimester abortion, what happens is you need to artificially dilate the cervix. It is no longer a natural process. You need to artificially dilate the cervix, and that can permanently alter the woman's body. And not just that, many women undergo so much pain that they need to be given anesthesia. And that anesthesia can have, because of the pain and the surgery, there can be so many negative effects on the woman's body where it can lead to convulsions, heart attacks, or in extreme cases, even death. Next, I would like to come to a very important study that was conducted in the Royal University Hospital in France. So, obviously we would want to ask the question, why would somebody wait until the third trimester, or why would somebody wait for a late abortion, right? When you could have done it in the beginning, because until 16 to 24 weeks, it's legal in many places. The survey results were very surprising. 37% people got abortions in the third trimester because there were false negatives, which is medical negligence in the basic form. And another 40% aborted the children in the third trimester because there was poor prognosis, which means the child was diagnosed with disabilities. Down syndrome, autism, all of this was shown up in the third trimester sonograms, and that is when the mothers actually went and aborted. So what are we trying to say here? That those fetuses don't have the right to life? Again, I'm going to summarize the entire crux of what the government is saying over here. We are not against abortion. We are against unregulated abortion. We cannot give somebody the right to just get an abortion anytime, anyhow, putting their life at risk, putting the fetus's life at risk. And this is why I would like to conclude here by saying that the government supports the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Thank you.
Let's move forward to the leader of opposition. I request Ms. Ananya to start with her speech in 3, 2, 1.
This House strongly doesn't support the decision of overturning Roe v. Wade. It was a landmark decision of the US Supreme Court in which the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States conferred the right to have an abortion, the basic human right that every woman deserves. Now, I would like to state some rights that have been put forward by the United Nations themselves. Women's human rights include the right to equality, to dignity, autonomy, information, and bodily integrate and respect for private life, and the highest attainable standard of health, including sexual and reproductive health without discrimination, as well as the right to freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. The right of women or girl to make autonomous decision, I like to reject it as a wrong, autonomous decision about her own body and reproductive function is at the very core of her fundamental right to equality and privacy concerning intimate matters of physical and psychological integrity. These are the rights that have been put forward by the United Nations. It is very clear that to see how deeply abortion bans, I'd like to reject it, sir, as of now. Going further, I would like to also tell how did we come to this decision of Roe and Wade. What has been the history of abortion in US? It was started in 1847 with the formation of American Medical Association. To tell you the irony of it, it was a complete male-oriented association which wanted to go out and make decision about a woman's body. Second, and then moving forward in the year 1880s, criminalization and vilification of the laws regarding the abortion was made. In 1910, abortion bans were made nationwide. In 1930s, because there was an abortion ban made throughout the nationwide, there was a total almost 1 out of every 5 of the recorded maternal deaths that year were due to illegal abortions. People will definitely go out and find a way to do something that they are. I like to reject. People are definitely going to go out and find a way to do something that they have banned it as of now. That is why there were 18% deaths. Considering it in number, the number accounted for 2,700. In 1955, the US had a conference on abortion legalization. Why was it done? In response to increasingly alarming media coverage of unsafe, illegal abortions. That is why this conference was held. In 1964, there was again an association formed to study the abortion. Then came the 1973 famous and fruitful Roe v. case. Why do we support the right to abortion? We definitely have some reasons for it. Firstly, I really like to appreciate the Prime Minister for bringing and explaining us the medical terms around the pregnancy. And they also had a question. They pointed out a question that why would women go out in her 30 weeks or 35 weeks of pregnancy to go for an abortion? Ma'am, there are some uncertain cases. Life is not certain. What if the health of the mother has deteriorated? What if the financial conditions of the women has deteriorated over the course of pregnancy? What if it was because of death of her partner? Are we considering these factors, or we will be stringent with the fact that if she wanted an abortion, she could have gone in the earlier weeks? I'm fasting. I cannot take a favor now.
No, you can't.
Okay. Why do we say that even if the women demand for the abortion in the early weeks, what are the factors that needs to be considered why the right to abortion should exist? This is the financial status of family. An unplanned pregnancy can always happen. Raising a child with poor finance is something that will not lead to bright future for the child and can be harmful for the family themselves. Health of the women. If she herself thinks that she is not capable to carry and parent a child, government has no authority to say that no, you should carry a child because we have given it in law and we ban the abortion. So that is why this house believes that we should not overturn the right to abortion. Thank you.
Let's move forward to the Deputy Prime Minister. In 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon to the House present here. The opposition leader went on to make a great speech about the rights for women and how we are fundamentally trying to destroy or go against the right for women as per the UN quote unquote. But let me just start off by saying that A, the rights for women are always upheld in the Constitution of America, and that's what the government does. And B, abortions are allowed when the woman's life is at risk. And that accounts for only 1% of the abortion conducted to save the mother, as per Dr. Landrum Shelter, who is a doctor who's a PhD in vitro fertilization and who stated this in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2022. Now, why is it important to understand? Another important concept is that the opposition goes on to state about the international laws of UN, where they fail to acknowledge and adhere that the domestic law always takes precedence over international law on domestic matters. Moving ahead, why is there a lot to begin with in the first place, and why was it overturned? There are 3 major constructives on which we have to focus right now that I want to add. The first, a fetus is a person protected by the 14th Amendment. Second, protecting prenatal life from time of conception is a compelling state interest, and I repeat, state interest. Even if the government has overturned the Roe versus Wade case, it completely depends on the state to adhere to it, to adhere to the rule as stated by the government, and as well as to prove any type of modification that they want to do to the law. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned about the fetus having life. Yes. So would you say that this is a global concept?
Of fetus having life?
Yes. Would you say medically or religious point of view, is this a globally accepted concept that the fetus has life?
So medically stated, after 6 weeks the fetus starts developing organs, starts developing a mind. So it does have conscient and sentient life. That's what my Prime Minister went on to speak about for the first 1-2 minutes of the debate. Yes, sir.
Is this a globally accepted concept is what I'm saying?
Sir, the context right now is set in US. So as per the United States of America, as per the Bible, which is the major religion, as per the Bible, which is the major book used by the majority religion sitting in US, yes, the fetus does have life after 6 weeks. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Which brings on to my point that yes, a fetus is a person that is conceived after 6 months, which is why we are saying that the abortion can only be should only be done before the first 6 weeks. Secondly, the Constitution doesn't regulate abortion; it's left up to the states to regulate abortion, which just proves my previous point. And abortion also violates the constitutional right of the unborn child. Now, it's also important to take a look at what the people of America feel, right, on the decision. According to Pew Research Center, there was a research that was taken where they have collected 2,415 data points based on medical survey as well as medical research, where they say that 2 to 1 people support abortion when the fetus is less than 6 weeks, and 2 to 1 oppose abortion when the fetus is more than 24 weeks old. Moving on, it's a very philosophical question, but 2 wrongs do not make a right. Yes, we do condemn rape as a government, we do condemn atrocious activities against the government, but that does not mean that we go ahead and take the life of a prenatal kid who is sentient, who has a life and is protected by the Constitution of America. Moving on, it's also very important to take into consideration the trauma that a woman faces when she goes through abortion. And it's also very important to take into consideration that the circumstance of conception of a child doesn't determine the worth of the child. Just because the child was conceived at an unfortunate situation, that does not determine the worth of the child. Just because, for example, if the child has passed, pregnancy is past 24 weeks, there is a high possibility that the woman might go ahead and give up the child for adoption as well. This should not include where she goes ahead and kills a child, or she goes ahead and creates complication for her own personal life. Also, only 1% of the total abortions across the world are a reason, 1% of abortions across the world are due to rape and incest, which is one of the major points that the opposition keeps on bringing up, where they talk about women's right when they are injured or something like that. Finally, I would like to conclude by saying that there are various rights given for various people across the United States of America, but we as the government completely feel that once a child or a fetus becomes a sentient living being, we cannot take away his right to live, we cannot take away his life to live a considerable life just because of the time of conception was wrong, or just because he was conceived in a wrong manner. Thank you.
Let us move forward to the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Starting 3, 2, 1. In 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon to everyone present here today. The context for this debate has been laid out. The history of this case has been laid out. The medical terminologies have also been laid out. So in my speech, I would like to address the root idea behind banning abortion. So let us see this through statistics. So after overturning this decision, the individual states will have the right to decide whether a woman can have an abortion or no. Each state will have their own jurisdiction in place. State laws will range from complete abortion bans with criminal penalties to abortion protections that include funding for clinics and legal protections for clinicians. There are 17 states as of today that have policies in place even prior to the decision that would effectively outlaw abortions soon after the ruling. I would like to emphasize on where these states are located. These states are located in the south of America, which has large shares of black and Hispanic women, the plains, which has a large share of indigenous population, and the Midwest as well. To obtain an abortion, women in states that prohibit abortions would likely have to travel out of state, which will result in disproportionate barriers to accessing abortions for people of color. Why am I raising this point? More than half of the abortions among women of color, based on available data by the CDC in the United States, in the data is as recent as 2019. 4 in 10 abortions were among black women, that is 38%. 1/3 were among white women, 33%. 1 in 5 among Hispanic women, 21%. And 7% among women of other racial and ethnic groups. The abortion rate was... I will just complete this statement and take it here. The abortion rate was highest among black women, 23.8 per 1,000 women, compared to 11.7 among Hispanic women and only 6.6 among white women. Your POI, please.
Okay, so sir, the context of this debate, I think you've got it a little skewed. We are not against abortion. We are against abortion without regulation. So when there is no threat to the mother's life and it is a late-term abortion, how can you justify it when you're putting both the mom's life and the child's life at risk? And also, second, just one small addendum to that, are you telling me that a developed fetus's right to privacy is less important, the mother's right to privacy is less important than the fetus's right to life?
I got your question.
Yeah.
To answer the first part very simply, in the case where the mother's life is in danger due to the abortion process, the medical expert themselves will not go ahead with the process now. The second point I would address in the later part of my speech. So continuing, there are potential reasons why abortion rates are higher among women of color. Black, Hispanic, American Indian and even Alaskan Native women come under the economically weaker section of the society. Data show that contraception use is higher among white women, 69% compared to black and Hispanic women. Because women of color live in areas with limited access to comprehensive contraceptive options. In addition, the healthcare system has a long history of racist practices targeting the sexual and reproductive health of people of color. Many women of color have reported discrimination. A survey as recent as 2022 found that across racial and ethnic groups, most women between the ages of 18 to 49 said that they do not want the Roe versus Wade decision to be overturned. This was 43% of the women. I would also like to have a look at the Supreme Court panel which overturned this very decision. The majority of opinion was authored by Justice Samuel Alito. Justice Alito, the other work of this notable man includes addressing religious and moral issues. He was the same person who wrote a majority opinion in the 2014 Burwell versus Hobby Lobby case, which rebuked the Obama administration's mandate that companies should provide contraceptive coverage, including drugs that can cause abortions. He also wrote a notable dissent from the majority opinion in 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges case, in which the Supreme Court held that the Constitution guarantees the right to same-sex marriage. He is a practicing Catholic from a first-generation Italian-American family. And in his multiple remarks, he has emphasized that faith provides a meaning and purpose in life. So to answer your second point, ma'am, the government has laid out that the fetus has life and which is protected by the 14th Amendment. That is only a Catholic belief. If you go by Jewish beliefs, life only exists post-birth. And to put it in very simple words, America is a sovereign nation. It is not just a Catholic nation. So there are racial motives behind this. Thank you so much.
Now let us move forward to the government with your time starts in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon to everyone. Coming to the main arguments proposed by the opposition. You know, when you talk about the states being a sovereign country, I would suggest you look at the constitution, because they never claim to be sovereign. In spite of the fact that, you know, the government claims, the constitution never uses the word sovereign in the constitution. So I think that's the point. You know, coming to the idea, you know, India is a secular nation, right? In India, pregnancy, abortion was banned to a particular stage. In the same cases of in USA, where until a particular week, abortion was banned. In spite of that, the MTP, the medical termination bill, you know, that which is still which was recently passed as a law, you know, allows women to have abortion only in very specific cases, which is happening in the USA already. When we talk about fetus having as a person protected by the 14th Amendment, this was the view of the Supreme Court itself. So I don't understand the objective where the opposition says that this is a religious view. Yes, sir.
Point of information. So when you say this was the view of the Supreme Court, can you elaborate on that? Who was the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court of the United States of America, they publish a summary of every judgment where they pass over, and every Supreme Court judge has their opinion on these issues. So,
Wonderful. So just to clarify, when you say belief of the Supreme Court, you mean belief of the panel that sat on this very agenda, right?
yes, sir. So when the opposition talks about beliefs and beliefs, I need to clarify one point here. Beliefs changes from time to time. We need to understand that very specifically, the constitution text never identifies abortion as being a very fundamental right. You know, the leader of opposition talked about abortion being a right under the Roe versus Wade decision. But we need to understand two very important words: federal right and the fundamental right. The abortion was guaranteed as a federal right, not as a fundamental right. There's a stark difference. The state will not protect the woman as a federal right. That is the law. That is the law of the land now. Further on, when the argument was put forward by the whip when asking as to when Roe v. Wade was overturned, it violates the 14th Amendment. I would like to ask a very simple question: how does overturning a Supreme Court judgment is unconstitutional? So you need to understand, Supreme Court is itself responsible for upholding the law. This is how it works. A very simple example here. To take the example of India, the Ayodhya land case, sir, the judgment was passed right now in the Supreme Court, and the previous judgment was passed in Allahabad High Court, sir. When you overturn the judgment passed by the Allahabad High Court, it is not unconstitutional, it's just setting a new precedent. You need to understand that precedents are set time to time. Right now, America is a religious country. Even though you say it's a secular country, it's accepting all countries, it is a majority Christian country. Moving on. America as a country is not has a different of governance as compared to other countries where the state governments have different ways of processing their laws, and the central government has no rights to dictate the laws to the state governments. Yes, sir.
So can you tell me abortion? What section of women have had more abortions? Is it the whites or the other racial ethnic groups?
So I'd like to not answer the question right now. Let me proceed further on. Coming to the idea of religion is talked about. Religion speaks of God's role in our creation and formation in the womb. It prescribes the same penalty, death for someone who causes for a baby in the womb as for someone who commits murder. We need to understand that respecting religious sentiments is very important right now as how the country is growing. A large population of Republicans, a large population of people who support this are Christians, the holy Christians. For the Christian, abortion is not a matter of women's right to choose to have a baby. The baby is already present and living. The chief argument against abortion right now is that the fetus is a living organism, and we need to understand that the consent of fetus is not taken while we abort the baby. A living human being is killed and you are okay with it. How inhuman do you feel right now to do that? With regards to how specific cases are talked about, when the leader of operation talks about UN rights to women and multiple countries, when you talk about the global conception of with regards to abortion, introducing very simple answer that domestic law takes precedence over international law very simply in many countries. Take example of Saudi Arabia where the Sharia law is taking precedence. You can't say the Sharia law is bad or anything because it's the country's own belief. Speaking from a particular perspective where you say that this country is wrong, this country is right, comes from a place of privilege. Religious laws are very much important in this today's world, and sometimes respecting their own rights is important. We do not say that abortion has to be banned, but after a set particular point, after 24 weeks, it is the right of the state to decide whether the woman can have abortion. One last statement if possible. This is the same law that is followed in India, and we don't have any problems with it. Why do we have a problem with this being followed in the United States of America? Thank you.
Let's move forward to the opposition whip.
Is it okay if I give a time? No. So you can start my time in 3, 2, 1, start. A very good afternoon to the House. I'd like to start my argument or my speech by mentioning what our side of the House supports. Laws are in place for the upliftment of people, making their lives better and not violating human rights, which the government is so openly supporting. The government again and again mentions how domestic laws and rights take precedence over international and global laws. But basic human rights, do we take that away just because domestic rights take precedence? We take basic human rights away from women just because the government tells domestic rights takes precedence. Other than that, we'd also like to mention how there has been a very clear religious bias in this decision. A majority Republican or white Christian panel was involved in giving this decision. As mentioned by the deputy leader of opposition, Chief Justice Samuel, I'd like to complete my section, had a long history of religious and moral decisions that had issues in it. One of the examples being same-sex marriage. How can we be blinded and our visions be blinded by such a biased religious perspective?
So, you talk about human rights for the women. Does the opposition believe that the fetus does not have the right for human rights? Does the fetus have human rights or not after 24 weeks of sentient life?
I'd like to answer that question. When asked to the government on how a fetus's life is defined globally, they bring in the Bible. They are like, the Bible says that the fetus has life, so we say that the fetus has life. That is what the government brings in. They bring in a religious book to govern a country, to make the rules for that country. I'd like not take that. The government also mentioned trauma that a woman goes through when she's undergoing abortion. But rape? Is that not traumatic? Is that supposed to be not considered when a woman is undergoing abortion? The government, like we clearly mentioned, the government stated medical facts as to why a woman shouldn't be going into abortion. And yes, if it's medical, wrong or medically inconvenient for a woman to go for abortion, a woman shouldn't go for abortion. But that doesn't mean you take the right away from that woman to apply for abortion. You cannot take the rights away from a woman if it's not medical. You cannot change the legality of it. Yes, I'd like to take the
So, very simple question. You said we're taking away rights, right? In the constitution, is there a very specific, explicit right given to the woman for abortion? Yes or no?
The 14th Amendment, like we mentioned, the right to privacy, which in the Texas holding also clearly stated that it was a violation of the 14th Amendment when the Texas holding was given, where in Texas they were not allowed to abort women. It was considered a violation of the 14th Amendment. I'd like to continue with my speech, please.
No, a follow-up if possible. Just on
No, I'd like to continue with my speech.
Alright, sir.
Also, to factor in racism. Like mentioned by the Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Leader of Opposition, we have a majority of the states in the south of the United States that, I'm not letting it, that tamper or do not allow women to abort children. This is because a majority of the black women apply for abortion there, and this is clear racism as we see it coming. Black women have been discriminated against from the very, very beginning. There was a law in the United States earlier which prohibited black women from aborting and allowed only white women into abortions, which clearly shows from what narrative are we building on, from what perspective this is being built on, and that is what the opposition would like to show here. So, to conclude my speech, I'd like to say that even though we know that abortion is a basic human right, abortion can help a woman by not sacrificing the future that she has, the long life that she can live by making this one decision. The government very openly and very clearly does not support it. So therefore, the opposition is proud to oppose.
So let us move forward to the opposition reply. Are you ready? 5 seconds. We'll begin in, you have 3 minutes. We'll begin in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon to everyone. I would once again like to summarize the points that the opposition has put forward. When it comes to abortion, the right should lie with the women and not with the state. State should not be allowed to justify or give a decision as to whether an individual should or should not go through the process. The government had a argument that what if the abortion would cause harm or injury or would cause some harm to the woman in question, to which we had a very clear reply that if the procedure is not safe, and this is not just for abortion but in general, if any medical procedure is not safe, the practicing surgeon will themselves not go ahead with it. Continuing, the government themselves have put this forward that the fetus has life, and they have themselves mentioned that this is taken by the Bible. However, we as the opposition have proof that the majority instances of abortion taking place in the US is in black women and other racial or ethnic groups that are there. So how can a law be decided by a religion which is not, how should we allow the law to be defined by a religion which is not using, where white women are not using this as much as the other racial groups? The government also themselves mentioned that beliefs change from time to time. Yes, we agree with that. The Catholic Church themselves were against homosexuality, and they themselves came around to the topic, and today as of the present world, they accept it. Likewise, we are hoping that as of today, when they believe that the fetus itself has life, there might be in the near future that they might come around it and believe that, okay, no, life only begins once the baby has been actually given birth to. Historically, the Catholics have gone back on their own terms that were there in place. Lastly, I would like to say that the racism factor cannot be ignored, because the Supreme Court panel that was there on this case were elected by Donald Trump, who was the former president, The decision came this year, which is 2022, when Joe Biden is in power, and Joe Biden himself has condemned this very decision. The decision was taken by the Supreme Court panel, which was majorly appointed by Donald Trump. And with that, I would like to conclude my speech.
Let us move forward to the government at large in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, House again. I feel somewhere the context of this debate has gotten skewed. Not once in any of our speeches did we say we are against abortion. We did not say that anywhere. We just said we are against unregulated abortion, which was the crux of the Roe v. Wade case. What Roe demanded was the right of a woman to abort at any time and in any manner suitable to the woman. And we are against that. We are not against abortion, and we have not said that at any point in any of our speeches. I would like to bring that to the notice here. Second thing I would like to say is, there was a very emotional point where the opposition whip said, what about women who have been through rape? Opposition? Abortion is allowed in cases of rape. Abortion is allowed in cases where women's life is at risk. How can you even make that statement? Next thing that I would like to say here is, they went on about how we are taking away human rights, taking away human rights. How are we taking away human rights? We are saying abortion is allowed until 24 weeks, but after 24 weeks, the fetus has life. And so that is not a religious fact, that is a scientific fact. It is a fact that we have backed up with scientific, medical issues that we have shown you. And what they seem to be forgetting is, America is one of the countries that is, one of the few countries in the world that separates religion and state. Our rulings are driven as much by logic, and they are not driven much by race or religion. And the racial profiling somehow was never mentioned in any of the government speeches. It was only the opposition who kept bringing it up. We were never against the race thing. We don't have any connection to the racial profiling over here. All we are saying is medically, humanitarian, these things, the abortion after the third trimester abortions, they actually go against humanitarianism, and they're even not even healthy in so many cases. The next thing I would like to say over here is, I would just like to counter one point where they said economic issues that were there. So economic issues in third trimester abortions are the most expensive. So somebody with economic issues wouldn't be able to get a third trimester abortion in the first place. The last thing I would like to say here is, again, I understand why there was some confusion in the debate, but I'm going to state it outright. I'm going to state it outright again. We are not against abortion. We are against abortion without regulation, and we feel that regulation is required for humanitarianism and for the fetus's right to life, and in many cases for the women's health as well. This is where I would like to rest my case. Thank you.